Good evening, Facebook, my YouTubers. Thank you for joining Warriors for Christ this evening. Hope everyone had a good holiday, safe holiday. Hope you got what you want. Hopefully, that was just spending time with your family and doing it safe. Hope with that we're gonna get started. Today, we have a up and coming community activist. Who's also happens to be my niece, who I'm very proud of, Deasia Gibbs. So welcome on to the show.
Thank you for having me.
um, so I wanted to I brought Deja on because she's very into the community, and one of the questions I wanted to ask her, which actually probably would be my later question. Uh, Forgive me. I'm actually got so many notebook with questions. Let me see. This better be the correct one. So I wrote it all down. Oh, the three notebooks, and I see the right one. So the reason I brought Deja on, because I wanted to get her opinion, because mostly on here we talk about the church a lot. So being that you're an activist, I wanted to bring you on to get your point on what do you think the church can do, or churches can do, to help with the violence in the city. That's going to be
Hmm.
the overall question I want you to keep on your mind.
Right.
But before we to do that, I want people to know a little bit about you. So the first thing is, can you give a little introduction of yourself, except for being an awesome niece and a great person?
Of course. So my name is Deasia Gibbs. I am 22 years old. I was born and raised in different parts of Baltimore. I'm the oldest of 9 siblings, so I have 8 young ones under me. Um, and as my uncle was just saying, I am very passionate and I'm motivated by my culture as a Black woman in America in 2020. And each component of what I just said, being a Black woman, being 22, being a woman in the year 2020, is all four of those aspects have problems of their own. So I'm just passionate about me, and that is all of those things. So
All right. So yeah. So that was we asked her to introduce herself. She told us some things about herself. But now I want to show you, if you don't mind me showing the video, the
yeah,
clip
that's fine.
on your Facebook, so people can actually see
Hmm.
what you're talking about or what we're talking about, and we are going to go deeper from there. So let me see if I hope this worked correctly. I have never uh, done this before. I'm screen sharing,
Hmm.
so let me choose the correct screen. All right, you guys see it here. Let
Don't
me.
mind me cheesing. I just love this video so much.
uh, so hopefully this is now allow me to go full screen. Oh, there we go. All right, so I'm restarted. All right, before I play it, can you uh tell those who are watching where is
Mhm.
this taking place at and what caused this gathering?
When I was stopped for this interview, I was participating in a peaceful protest in downtown Baltimore for George Floyd. So this was this past June, I believe. It was definitely summertime. I want to say the last couple days of June, this took place downtown. For this particular protest, this was my first one in Baltimore City. I'm sure anyone watching who is familiar with the city understands why when I was choosing protests before, it was and on the outskirts of the city or DC, things like this. So this particular one was my first inner city protest, and it was completely peaceful. There was no problems at all. At this very moment, we were actually stopping traffic on the 83 South ramp. So police had to completely shut down the highway. So that was a very moving moment for me. Like I said, I have been to other rallies, other protests, but this is one that really stuck out to me because one, I was home. I was in a city with people who grew up just like I grew up and saw the things that I seen, and just to see my city come together peacefully. This interview that you're about to watch is one of the most amazing days that I've had so far.
All right, guys, so you can see it's only a minute and 30. We're gonna watch it entirety because I want everyone to hear the passion of her voice. So let's check it out. All the time I see these stories and I try to stay informed and not get too involved just because it carries so much weight behind it for me. I'm the oldest of 9 siblings, so I have 8 young ones who are looking just like these boys who are murdered way too often.
George Floyd was not too far from the age of my dad. I had two of them who loved me and raised me my whole entire life. So every day I log onto my phone or I turn on the TV and I'm seeing these people who look just like my brothers and look just like my fathers and my uncles. It starts to get personal. And I think that it's important for everyone, even the people who don't look like my brothers and don't look like my fathers, speak out because it has to stop. I think that if it doesn't, this country is in a downward spiral. So for the most part, I think what brought me out here was love. I'm tired of seeing these mothers crying on the TV, and it gets to the point where, as Black parents, I'm not one yet, but I soon hope to be. Well, in the future, I hope to be. What do we teach them? Because up until now, when we have the talk, which every Black kid has had with their family, just as serious as the sex talk, we teach them what they tell you, listen, comply. But when they're complying and they're still dying, where do we go from here? What do we teach them now? We can't not exist. They can't change the color of their skin. So what do we do now? I'm here to answer that question.
Wow. Wow. Like I said, that is so deep. I know that I brought you on for talking about violence in general. But I know here this was particular about George Floyd and police brutality. So it can be all that. We can all that in general.
It all ties together.
Yeah, all just ties. So now, like I said, I got a couple questions before we dive into the main question that I mentioned earlier. What were some of your feelings when you were here at this
Protest.
this protest?
That I think I want to say the primary emotion that I felt was pride. For a couple reasons. Pride in myself for taking the time out of my day and going down here. And I have arguments with people all the time. What is a protest going to do and things like that. I was proud of myself that I was participating in something like that. I was proud of my city. It's not too often that we can get together and everything remain peaceful. So to be together for something that matters so much, and I was there for hours. It was so hot. Like I said, we closed down the 83 South, and it was so many people, Black, white, old, young, gay, straight. It was just amazing. I was so proud to be a part of something like that. I definitely was scared. Of course, there were police officers there. I understood. I talked to my parents before I go. I understood the severity of how these things could go. I was definitely scared for things to turn left, but it was definitely worth the risk for me. So I want to say pride first, fear second. But not fear, because fear is a negative thing, because I didn't feel any negativity. So not fear, maybe just caution. I definitely wasn't scared. Fear is not the right answer.
You mentioned there was some police there.
hmm
Were you able to interact with any of them, like talk to them, get their point of view on this? I'm just wondering.
No, not at this particular rally. I did not interact with any of the police officers. I watched a lot of them. There was a moment during the protest where some of the officers decided to take a knee, and I was very close to them for that, but I did not interact.
Okay. Um, Next question. What what started to? I know you talked about it in the video a little bit,
hmm
but what motivated you to begin to take part in such protests or begin to speak out
hmm
about police brutality? What they call black on black crime.
hmm
What kind of initiated uh, you to start speaking about that to get into that?
My sole motivation for almost anything that I do, I'm sure you guys noticed when you asked me to introduce myself, as well as my introducing myself on the video. I always state I'm the oldest of those nine. So my siblings are my motivation for almost everything that I do. So definitely just seeing the connection between those boys that look just like, Amar, and look just like CJ, and look just like Desmond and Xander, and, Jade. And I have so many brothers. So it's just like I said in the video, it just got personal. But also, outside of police brutality, I'm an activist for Black people in every way. So not only with the violence for the police, but violence. Well, first of all, before I get into this, let's not use Black on Black crime. That is something that is made up. Okay,
Yeah, that's why I said
because
quote unquote.
yeah, that's made up. They made it up. But violence in our communities, because that's what it is. People who live together tend to commit violence towards each other. There's no white on white. There's no Indian on Indian. It's just people who live near each other.
Yeah.
So violence in the communities, violence with the police, violence at all. I just hate to see Black people suffering. I hate to see them suffering financially and socially and economically and personally. So me just being Black to my core and loving every ounce of it, having these siblings of mine growing up right behind me, watching. Right after me there's my 18-year-old sister, so I don't have much leeway. They're right behind me, and right behind her is CJ. He's 16, and right behind CJ, like, we're all literally back to back. So my dream is for each one of us to get progressively better. So I want to set the bar as high as possible so that my 18-year-old sister, even the mistakes that I made, she doesn't make, and she's just a little bit better, and it just gets better. And like I said, it just ties into family, but also just us as Black people. I want to see every Black person that I know succeed. In order to see that, these are the things that I have to care about.
Okay, I mean that's good. I really wish that most people would see that. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
your life may be going through something. Your life may be tough. Your life may be good.
Mm-hmm.
But look at it in such a way like you want to make those who come in behind you
Mm-hmm.
better. We have to get past the point where it's about us. Everybody always thinking about themselves. So it's good to
Absolutely.
see you being young as you are, willing to sacrifice your comfort and all that
Mm-hmm.
so that others or your siblings can have a better life or look towards or fight for a better life. So no, that's powerful. Um, what other things have you done besides this protest that you were in here? Were there some other things? And I believe was this featured in the newspaper that
Yes, that interview was recorded by a Baltimore Sun writer. So it was printed in the newspaper as well as the website, and then that video, the reporter himself posted on his Twitter.
Okay, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that I had a feeling that it was done by the Sun,
Mm-hmm.
um, Baltimore Sun. We all here in Baltimore, the Baltimore Sun. But I just wanted to make sure that was right. Yeah. So what were some other things that you have done?
Um, I can think back as far as my volunteer work at school. One of the things that I did, and it wasn't so much as activist and Black rights, but it made a difference. Volunteer after school programs. Kids getting out of school and just having something positive. That was one of my favorite things to do. In high school, ninth and 10th grade, I volunteered with a couple of my friends at a community program called ROC. It stands for Reaching Our Community's Kids. It's run by Mr. Kelvin, who is a fantastic gentleman. I actually haven't talked to him in a few years, but he played a big part in my first volunteer and fall in love with helping people. So I would go to the elementary school and help him after school. From there, middle school, I was involved in Black Saga clubs, debate teams where we discussed history. So it started very early for me. And then once I got to high school, got my own car, got a little bit more independent, is when I started doing things myself. I was very active in mental health at my high school. And just protests, especially with, I want to say, starting with the Trayvon Martin era. That's one of the biggest stories that I remember stuck with me. So I started protests then. Actually, I was in high school and I did not tell my parents about that. So there you go. There you go, guys. I snuck to a few protests in high school. I knew my parents were not going to approve of it, but luckily I was fine. I didn't see anything. Everything was fine. So protest in DC on my primary. I go to a lot in DC. Those are usually the ones that I attend. And then that is the most recent one, the protest that I did downtown in Baltimore. I haven't been to one since that one.
Okay. Um, Here on the show, the reason why we started the show was that we can just people can come on, discuss their opinion,
Mm-hmm.
uh, not worried about arguing. It's just like we believe on the show that everybody has the right to express their opinion,
Mm-hmm.
whether you like it or not. You can agree to disagree. You can agree however you want to take it. And like I said, we wanted to talk about world things events that happen in the world, topics, and we wanted to put a perspective on from a Christian standpoint. I don't know where you stand in your belief, but with that, um, we do talk to people that may not believe, because everything that we do, we live in a world where everybody's not a Christian. So
Absolutely.
you still want to hear people's opinion on certain subjects and topics. And so that's the reason why I brought you on board, because you're up and coming. I've been seeing you getting more involved in community events, and trying to speak positive, especially for those younger than you, and even for those that may be a little older.
Mm-hmm.
So, not really knowing your belief system, I wanted to know, how do you think, what do you think the church can do? When I mean church, I mean Christians overall. I just normally use that term church
Mm-hmm.
to speak as a at large. What do you think the church can do to help with things like police brutality, um, just overall crime in the city? We
I
change
think that,
there.
and we talked about this. I got the topic a few days ago, and I've been thinking about it. And I'm like, what could they do? And I think the first thing that I want to say to answer the question is, I feel like a lot of everything almost in my life, from being born in 1998 to being 22 years old in the year 2020, everything has changed. Everything has progressed and adapted. My music has changed for what's mainstream. My clothes have changed from what's popular, things like that. I feel like one thing that would benefit everyone, all Christians and all black people in who are Christians, is that if the church try to do that same thing, and that's stay up to date. I feel like my generation is a little disconnected from the church, and it's just because it hasn't progressed, it hasn't changed with our lifestyle, I guess. When I'm reading The Whole, which I started reading, I haven't finished, or when I'm watching old classic Medea movies, the church was such a big thing. It was, you knew your pastor personally. It was, if mom and dad are having problems, they went to their pastors and their churches, and they knew every child's name. And when there was a community event, it was the church throwing it. And they suffered as a community, and they grew as a community, and it was, the church was much more intertwined with the black family than it is today. Then that's for multiple reasons. Like I said, the world has changed. I remember when I was growing up, every Sunday I was at Christian Memorial Church. And not saying that because I told this to my friends, not saying that you have to be in a church or a part of a church community to be a good Christian. And I use that, lightly, to have a relationship with God. Actually, I'll change it to that. You don't have to be a part of a church community to have a personal relationship with God. But I feel like as time has changed, the ways, the thinking, the acceptance of the church hasn't changed. And because of that, until that changes, I don't think there is much that the church can do. So I think, to answer that question, what the church can do, it has to help anything. It has to start with us as black people, as black communities, as a city, grounding ourselves and making the church a safe haven again, and making the church a part of our family again. I feel like, I don't know, for me, for my friends, the people I'm around often, there's no personal relationship. Even my friends who go to church every Sunday, or who are church goers, they don't have their pastor's numbers, and they don't, when they're going through something, they're still texting their friends, and it's not a church problem. When there is things going on in the neighborhood, churches are not involved anymore. And then that's for a couple of reasons. Baltimore City is not really a safe place. That could be a big problem. You know what I mean? So I really feel like there's a cycle that we have to figure out how to break. And the answer to how, I think we all have to come up with together. Because like I said, in order for the church to help the violence, the church has to be involved in the community. In order for the church to be involved in the community has to be safe. So it's like, it's a give or take battle. But I think one of the biggest problems and everything that kept crossing my mind as I was trying to answer this question was, there's a disconnect. There's not the same thing. I don't get the same feeling from me that you guys had when I'm reading, your stories, or hearing your stories about, my dad and you and Big Will and Kenny, and y'all family was a church. Even when family, from what I've read, even when family wasn't necessarily getting along, we all went to church. The church through this, and the pastor knew this, and I just feel like that we have to fix the disconnect first.
All right, no, that was a lot to take in, but it
Yeah,
was all good.
sorry.
Like I
My
agree with
brain, it
you.
just goes as I'm
No, I
talking.
agree with you 100% on everything you just said.
Mhm,
Uh, there's some things that the church does now that, to me, I just don't think should be the way.
mhm,
First of all, I know you said that violence may be a big part of it. Why the church is not really involved, and with that, I would say that churches who are afraid to go out. I'm not saying that you shouldn't worry about your well-being, but when the church was started, with Christ and everything, it started in violence.
mhm.
Like that was violent. So
Literally.
yeah, it was literally violence. If you did something, Christ was crucified.
Mhm,
So I'm glad you mentioned that if we saying that we Christians will be Christian and want to help our community, we have to be willing to put ourselves on the line to better someone else. You
mhm,
know, to save a life, it may means a life being taken.
mhm. And I'm
You know,
not saying go out in the middle of a gang war and sing kumbaya. I'm
yeah,
saying
absolutely.
in the summertime, get to know, in the summertime at that playground that may be a problem playground, let's throw a church community event where we can get to know these people that may have been, that we may see in a negative light. But my thing is, you never know a person's story. I don't believe that you know anybody until you know someone. So I just feel like it has to be a starting place. So like you said, putting yourself on the line, but it could just start with little things, events, getting to know the kids first.
Yeah, and you when you said having community events, that is true. Like the church has to come out as walls.
Mm-hmm.
Stop saying, "Hey, come to church," or, come to this building, and then when they do come, you put all the restrictions on about how they should dress, how they should act, and all that. Of course, that's going to turn someone around. If they got tattoos and all that, you talking about they got to cover it. Like none
Mm-hmm.
of that means anything. The church, I agree with you, has have to go to where these people are. I was talking to your father, uh, maybe last week, or yeah, I think it was last week, and I was telling him how that you were coming on the show. Matter of fact, it was the day I asked you to come on. That
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Saturday or something, and he said to me, he's like, "Man, I remember when you first got saved back in '98." I showed you how old I am. Well, when I got saved, I actually would go to them when they were on the street corners,
Mm-hmm.
and I would talk to them on the street corners. Doing whatever they were doing. I would talk to them on the street corners, and they actually say, "Man, oh, Doc, get your brother. Here he come, man, with all that crap, right?" But
Mm-hmm.
by doing that, I actually influenced a lot of those guys. Everybody go their own route, but they still remember the stuff that I said to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I believe the church needs to do is talk to people, like I said, build a relationship up that can, as people would say, transcend borders. Like get to know them, so when they need you or need someone to talk to, there's someone there. The church
Mm-hmm.
is giving food out, but why not, you know, help somebody go to school or start a trade? Not just food. Yeah, food is important, but if that person is gonna go out and still get killed or go shoot someone, or can't think right because they're angry, and then the police come when they happen to be in a bad mood. So now something else is going around with the police. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, help spread knowledge, and I think the church can get involved. The church can get involved with that, and I just see something like mentoring. Do you think that would be a good thing? Um, should they mentor them things
Yes.
Christ and so forth?
Yes. I think that structure from being a kid who grew up in the inner, because even grow an inner city kid from when I was ages 7 through 12, when I was really, outside and having fun, is different than city kids now. Like I had fun. I was able to go out with my friends and do everything. So times have changed even from when I was necessarily a kid. So, like I said, I just think the church has to come out of its walls and just update its way of getting people. Like you said, obviously people aren't coming to church. So there has to be another way. The Black community needs structure. And I feel like the church could be a big part of it. Every Black family that I know loves our faith. You know what I mean? But it's just like, it's just not as grounded and structured as it was years and years ago.
Yeah, I I see it now as people try to live it, saying, they're Christian, they're believers,
Mm-hmm.
but when it comes to doing it, what they say they're supposed to be doing, is a lack of that. Like I said, just
Mm-hmm.
like you go to these events, you do it because you want to better the life of your
The
siblings,
next person. Mm-hmm.
the next person. And I think the church needs to follow in that same route. Like, I'm going to these things, I'm going to talk, whether you disagree or agree with whatever's happening, just to put information out there. And also, I wanted to mention how the church maybe can help the community have something to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's about entertaining. I remember growing up, like the church used to sponsor trips to the
Mm-hmm.
park or to the lake or something like that to give kids something to do. Now, like I said, if there's no playground nearby, they don't want to do anything. They stay in house and, like you said, play video games, and
Yeah,
there's no involvement of getting people to come together.
it's nothing to do but what they're seeing around them, especially now because kids are not going outside and playing all day. In the summertime, my dad didn't see me. I'll see him in the morning, we eat breakfast, and I'll see you when the street lights cut on. Goodbye. Like I'm riding my bike, and kids don't. They just sit in the house under their parents. And for those kids who have, not the best home lifestyle, and then they're home for school, so don't even get, that outlet. They're home and they're watching, and I feel like a lot of parents don't understand how observant kids are. Just because you're in the other room, don't mean they don't hear you. So
Yeah,
I feel like a stigma. Another thing in the Black community that has to be strengthened is our understanding of mental health and the way people work, because to me one of the things that just never made sense to me is how you know a soldier, someone in the army can go and, before I even say this, I want to say my stepmom's a veteran. I have the utmost respect for anyone who puts their life on the line to fight for the country. I'm just making a comparison. So, when people go to fight wars and they see somebody who they consider their brother, very best friend, die, then they come back and they can't control their emotions. You go to a doctor, you have PTSD. Okay. So when you have kids even younger, you have to be 18 to sign up for, to go to war. So when you have kids even younger, 13 years old, watching their very best friend die in their arms the same way that they did, and then he grows up and he can't control his emotions, and he's making these radical decisions, and he didn't see his mom do this and his dad do this, and then he goes and commits a crime or an act of violence, and it's thrown under the jail. He has PTSD. So I think that it's so many things in the Black community, especially in inner city um, families, that has to be changed. The church, mental health, family structures. It's just a lot that we need. And I think, but honestly, 2020, it has not been the great year. But I think that this is the beginning. I feel a lot more people are waking up and understanding mental health, and even myself, as far as the church, this year has been one of the most challenging, but it also has been the closest that I've been to God in a very long time. It's been now recently, very recently, I say things like, um, look at God, or, thank God. And those are very little things, but that's not something that I was doing last year this time. So I feel like we're on the brink of the beginning, but everyone has to pitch in.
yeah. I know a lot of people say this year has been a rough year. Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
and I can see, I can see people losing their jobs and so
Mm-hmm.
forth. Um, but but as you said, there are bad things happening, but it has been an eye opener. Not only to what's happening in this country, what's happening in this city, but people within themselves. It's an eye opener for yourself to see what we can go through and can go through. And
Mm-hmm.
that was so much of things you mentioned talking about the Black community, because that's kind of seems um, where we're going with this. The Another thing that church can be done is that we can't make church church. It can't be come sit and just listen to
Mm-hmm.
somebody preach it. You said that children be in the other room and they can still hear what their parents are saying.
Mm-hmm.
So that if someone is a churchgoer or a believer, and their parents is not only about speaking it, is also living it.
Mm-hmm.
So you make it more attractive for your child to want to be it. If the
Mm-hmm.
child sees a whole bunch of hypocrisy, And what you're doing, you're telling them the one thing, you're just dragging the church in the building, but you go home and do something else, and that's not going to make them want to do that. That's not going to be
Exactly.
for their emotion. That's not going to be good for their psyche. So the church needs to start living it. And I'd like to say it starts at home. And when you start that at home, you're, good parent, being the best you can, your best ability. We are human, we make mistakes.
Absolutely.
But showing them, I think that will be a good step. Because if you if you raise your children right, maybe they can speak some good stuff to their friends and
Hmm.
hope, keep their friend from being involved in something that will cause their life um, to be in danger. So I agree with that. Someone has said when you were talking, someone said all valid points. They're liking what you're saying. Um, Another person said, I remember when they used to have church outside during the summer. Yeah, that was very popular in the '90s. Once again, I'm old, giving my age away. Uh,
There used to be like kids groups when I was growing up. Like, um, the church that I remember most fondly is Christian Memorial. Going with grandma and stuff. And I remember even when the service was over, I had friends in the church, and we could, it was like a room that we had. It was just, it was very important to me. I can't remember it specifically. It was a group, if it was a group, or maybe the parents were in the group, and us kids just were being watched and playing around. But we were at the church, and I can't, and again, church does not necessarily mean you don't have a relationship with God. Um, you can teach your children how to love the Lord and understand the Bible at home. But the church could be something so great for our community, like it was before. It's held us together for years. For some reason, we have let go of those, um, ropes that that had us connected to the church. But if we gain those again, I do feel like it could be something very powerful for our community, because everyone that I know, for instance, like my grandmother, um, who has a very strong relationship with God, just has more space and more peace to deal with other things. You have people fighting demons and have no doing it all by themselves. They don't understand that there's God. Like for me, and I'm speaking for myself, honestly. This is my experience. I was suffering and crying. I just could not understand, why is this my life, and why do I have to keep going through this? I'm a good person and I help people, and I just. And then finally, I talking to my mom, and she just, oh, this is my mom's favorite line: "Let go and let God." I'm a
yeah,
very worrisome person, so this year I did that, and to see what it did for me, the peace that it brought me. And life isn't perfect, but I understand that I can step back and say, that makes sense. Or, okay, I can do it though. I understand this now. And I can talk to him and I can ask him for what I want. And honestly, these days I feel like I'm on a speed dial or something, because he's been giving it right to me. So if that he can do that for me, I cannot imagine what he can do for everybody that I'm trying to help. My family, my community, Black people in general. Um, I just wish that everyone could just have that moment that I had.
yeah. It like I said, it's different for everyone. For people just
Hmm.
have one moment, just be like, this is who I need to depend on. I need to depend on the Lord. I need to depend on Christ.
Hmm.
Um, and some people come to that themselves, but it also takes the church to also present that to people. And I think the church that we see today, the one reason why there is a disconnect is, one, I don't think there's enough youth in the church. If the church age goes from people in their uh, 50s and 60s to maybe in their 40s, straight down to 10 and 11, you
Yeah.
know, the children, the babies, that shows you there's a huge disconnect.
Hmm.
Uh, and the church do need to adapt. I'm not saying change your doctrine or change what the church is saying, but change the ways as and things, things that way you used to do. You got to come to the church building. You
Hmm.
know, now with something like this, there's no church building. There's no church gathering because
Hmm.
COVID doesn't allow it. So it
Hmm.
means we have to adapt to that and still speak to people and try to build people up. And if we get rid of those things that you said, those ropes that hold the church back from interacting with
Hmm.
the youth, then that keeps the youth from coming in. I mean,
Hmm.
one thing that when I first started going, that interested me was the people that were into speaking to me that brought me to Christ. They would come pick me up and take me and my homie. to go play ball all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then on the ride, you know, they were ministers, they would talk to us about Christ and God and everything. But the whole event, the whole thing was, let's just spend time together, you know, and that changed my life. And I think that's the way it should be. It's like, you know, go spend time with people. You know, they didn't know me from Adam and Eve, but they came and got me. When it came to, you know, needing money, they would take me on jobs to either haul trash or do stuff. So they was always there just interacting. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
think church is, do you think the church is interacting? You said that, but do you have more to say on that situation of the church not interacting with the community enough?
I think for speaking for my generation, people my age, it's very sad to say, but for this generation, the church is kind of the bad guy. And I think that's because we are the age of progression, of acceptance. It's so many things that are acceptable today that were not acceptable even as little as 10 years ago. People are expressing themselves more, and that's through tattoos, and that's through these crazy funky hairstyles. I mean, look at me. There, it's makeup, and there's body acceptance going on, and there's feminist movements. There's so much that this generation is picking up, and it's honestly not it's not being it feels sorry, let me get my words together. So with all this progression going on, I feel like we as a generation feels like we as Christians, because I play both, aren't on that wave. They don't accept that. They don't want people to come into church with their tattoos because it's not really acceptable church attire, but this is the way I express myself, and I love myself, and I love my tattoos. Why can't I love me and love the Lord at the same time? I feel like just as we preach, and it's widely known that the Lord loves us as we are, we have to practice it. Like you just said, we can't just say it and not practice it. If there is someone who wants to strengthen their relationship with the Lord, it is not our job as Christians to tell them how they have to look to do it. You know what I mean? Like, and I get that there's respecting, of course. Make sure you are respecting the people around you, but respecting the people around me also have to respect me. And this is me, on the fence from both sides. If I want to go to church, I want to come to church the way I want to come to church. If I'm at church and you're coming to my church, then, have some type of respect. So there has to be open a gateway to communication.
Yeah, that is true. We like, when, first of all, when you're, it's my opinion as a believer and
Mm-hmm.
trying to somebody minister. If you minister to someone, first of all, you shouldn't be necessarily pointing out their faults, unless you're led to by, you know, God. That's a whole different story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the point is that you want to talk to them. You want to open their eyes and let them know they're doing something wrong just by showing them love. For example, you know, if you come to church, you need, some churches, I'm not gonna say all churches,
Mm-hmm.
you need to be dressed a certain way. Like you said, you need to cover tattoos. Um, if a guy come in dressed as a woman, that won't be allowed. You know,
Mm-hmm.
all these different things that wouldn't be allowed. Um, hey, we got. I'm not sure if she wants to join, but we have Kia. She's also one of the panelists, and it's someone I knew for a while, so I'm gonna add her. So what I was saying is that first you have to invite them. You have to get them to come in. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a moment in the Bible that Christ was talking to a lady who was about to be stoned, but she was naked, and he still talked to her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he didn't say go away and go put on clothes on. He talked to her how she is. So if a man or a woman comes dressed in as an opposite sex with tattoo, hair, blonde hair, none of that matters. Like you said, you just want to talk to them. You want them to come. And I
Mm-hmm.
one of the things the church has been doing for a long time is holding on to these things, how people should look when we're no longer in the 80s, we're no longer in the 90s. People don't look the same no more, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
accept the way they look, then teach them, and then let them make the decision on how they attire or what they should be practicing, and not necessarily bashing. Unless you say, let's say, I'm going directly to someone and say, hey, you need to stop doing this, which does
Mm-hmm.
that. But overall, I do believe the church points out too many of the young people's faults,
Mm-hmm.
and that keeps them from coming. If they already have dealing with self-esteem problems, mental issues, sexual issues, if they're having mental problem with these and they come to you for help, and the only thing you're doing is bashing them, telling them they can't come in, I do believe that is a problem. You hit that on the head. Um, I want to get Kia's opinion on some things, but before we do that, or maybe she has to ask you some questions. We had a couple comments. Um, Someone says the church was a big part of the civil rights movement. Absolutely was. Another person said church needs to stop, or not stop, but they need to go out to the unsaved instead of telling the unsaved to come to them. Great point.
Mm-hmm.
We did mention that. Um, the hurt. Somebody said, "Oh, this is Kia." Actually, said that. She said the church has patterned themselves after the world, and now the church is no longer popular in the world. Kia, you wanna clarify that more? Kia, can you hear me?
Deasia kind of mentioned it. We've had different movements and different trends throughout history, and for a large chunk of history, um, church was popular. The Everyone agreed on a moral compass. There was a one consistent moral standard, and it was a great part of culture, specifically African American culture. It was the standard, and it was acceptable. When the world no longer deemed church um popular due to the different progressive movements, due to the feminist movement, due to all of the different revolutions, and when people became more liberal, then it was no longer appealing for youth to come, or youth didn't feel like they had to come. I know in my grad school I read an article in which they did a study, and more youth were declining to come to church when it became an option for them. When back in the day, certain people, young people, didn't have an option. You went to church because your parents went to church, and you did that until you left their house, and then that tradition just kind of continued. And as time progressed, people stopped coming. The trend shifted. A lot of people do not look at the Bible as truth. They look at it as fairy tales. This is documented research information that I'm presenting. And because the Sunday school and the Bible was treated as fairy tales and stories, people didn't use it as a life manual. There was no reason for them to come. I think the biggest implication of from what's been said on here since I've been listening is it's religion. Young people are refusing religion. And we've had this discussion several times in the past. There's a lack of relationship. There's a lack of intimacy with the Father. There's a lack of understanding who the Father is, because when we understand who the Father is, we can absolutely come with the way we are. There's no dress code in the Bible. It just doesn't exist. And we really don't have time to wave our fingers and tell young people how they should look and how they should dress, when the Bible tells us not to be focused on outward appearance or outward adornment anyway. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So the youth real recognize real. I am I'm a teacher. I've worked with youth for the last almost 20 years of my life. Recognize real. We're dealing with a generation that does not fear. Do you understand? They're desensitized to a lot of things. So the young people are not going to come into a setting full of fake, phony people. They're not going to come into a setting full of hypocrites. If you see your mother singing on choir and shouting on, Sunday morning, but she cussing out her girlfriend and her man Sunday night, they're not interested. Mm-hmm. So this is what has happened to church with the youth. Like it has to be a connection. We're relational beings. It has to be relationship, and it has to be authenticity. I mean, those are necessary prerequisites.
What you think about that, D?
I 100% agree, especially with the hypocrisy. I know I've heard a lot of people my age in this conversation use that word. Why don't you go to church? It's full of hypocrites, or second best is I'm uncomfortable there. I don't feel like I'm wanted there. So I feel like that plays a big part in the disconnect. Like you said, churches go from 40 and up, and then the huge gap to just the babies. And it's because teenagers, they start feeling that uncomfortability, like what I like isn't acceptable here. The way I want to dress or how I feel, or it's just not accepted here. So why would I want to come here? So I feel like because now, like you said, there are 40, 50s, and 60 years old. Eventually, those people can't run the church anymore. And then we only have the 10 who's going to run it. Eventually, all these people who are running the churches with these rules and with these, you have to understand that we're going to run out of 60-year-olds. Like, so we have to create that bridge because someone has to keep the tradition going. Not saying there's no young people in churches, but there's not enough.
So in your age bracket,
Mm-hmm.
I'm very curious, how many of your friends, family, how many be are interested in the church, but they feel like being that the church is a hypocrite, they don't partake in it, or they don't go after it. I'm just curious.
Yeah. So I want to say, for my friends, for my social group, I won't say just my friends. For my social group, because that includes my cousins and things like that, we all believe in God. We all know that he is real and how he has affected our life. And all of us have had our moments for different reasons of questioning him. But 100% of all of us are not attending a church right now. We will sit in my car for hours and discuss this. Sometimes I'll call my best friend, her specifically, my best friend Taja. We have had, take this as literally as possible, complete mental breakdowns. Crying, the snot and everything. I can't understand this. I don't understand this. Maybe I should go to church. And then not too long ago, we did. And I don't know if it was the church, but it just wasn't there for us. It was just, and I'm sure, like I said, it was just our first time, but it's just not a comfortability for us. It just wasn't a comfortable situation. I didn't feel wrapped in God's arms when I went to church. I felt way more wrapped in his arms sitting on the edge of my bed with a one-on-one. So I feel like that's a big part of the problem.
Yeah, I know you got something to say. I just want to make this statement real fast. If you're watching this, you hear this young lady saying that people are talking about the church. They're talking like there's an interest in God right now. There's an interest in Christ right now. We have to get out of 4 walls. I just want to say that for those who are watching, like it takes more than just what we've been doing. And
especially from my experience, there's not a disbelief. That's not my experience. It's not a he's not real or it's not there. It's a I don't know how to connect with him. It's maybe I'm going through so much. Maybe I do need him, but where do I even go? I'm not going to nobody's church. I'm not going there. You know what I mean? Like, it's just church. Honestly, from our perspective, is the bad guy right now.
It's not relatable. It's not relative. And again, coming from someone, it's my job. I have to identify with young people. I have to see their heart. I have to empathize. I have to understand. In my position as an educator, they would not learn from me if I was not relatable. That does not mean I have to act like I'm that age, because I'm not. I'm 37. You know what I'm saying? I have to act like I understand their back. I came from their background because I didn't. But I see them. I see their heart. I know what interests them. And they have to understand. They have to feel this connection. They have to understand the purpose, and they have to understand what's in it for them. And I'm not even saying it from a selfish perspective. In my opinion and from my experience, I have not seen that in church, not for the young people. I just have not seen it. There are plenty of churches that have youth departments, that have youth day, that have mentors, that address the 7 cultural mountains, that talk about the different cultural societies, that will say, what is your interest? If you like fashion, that I'm going to teach you about fashion. There are churches like that. And I feel like those are the churches that are most appealing to the young people, but we don't see a lot of churches like that in the Black community. Am I being clear?
Yes.
Does that make sense? Like, that's why church is looking like the bad guy, because I know, just putting myself in the mindset of the teenagers that attended the last 2 churches I went to, I would be on my phone the entire service, and I will go to the bathroom and check out, because this is not connecting to me. This is not relatable to me. The God you're talking about is not going to help me understand how to deal with a God that just broke my heart, or a God that I just laid with that's not answering the phone for me the next day, or talking about me, to their boys. And no, they're not going to understand. Like, you know what I'm saying? Your word is not going to help me understand that. Your word is not going to help me understand, the devastation of when my best friends talk about, me behind my back, or go on social media, or in the wrong person's ear. These words are not addressing the things that matter. Do you understand? And I'm not saying that it can address it. I'm saying that it's not addressing it. So there is a disconnect. And then to hear you say that people are hungry, they want to see God, they want to know God, they want to know more about God, it's very, very important, because like Damien just said, the world needs to hear that cry. The world needs to understand the body has a responsibility. We can't compartmentalize Christianity and God. We can't just have one target audience, hone in on that target audience, or that audience is going to give the most tithes, or the most offering, or the most bang for our buck, and just forget about their children, or just forget about the youth. And that's what's happening. I'm not trying to offend anybody, and I don't think it's on purpose. It's a plethora of different reasons why the young people aren't being reached, but
they aren't being reached, and they need to, because honestly, we're in the land of the lost right now. It's like I said, so much changing and going on around us. There are no precedents. There is no right or wrong right now, honestly. And a lot of this stuff we are guessing. It's never been a time where the same-sex people could get married. There hasn't been a time where women can be so open about their sexuality, or their pride in just being a woman. This is new territory for everyone. So especially with kids like me, who definitely, for sure, I'm grounded. I know he's there. You know what I mean? I grew up, church was all I knew. But then now that I'm in that land of the lost, and I'm just, growing, and I'm speaking for me, because I always say I can only speak for myself, but I'm sure I'm not alone, just going through all this stuff. And is this right? Is this acceptable? Can I like this? Can I support this? Am I going to hell? Like, it's just all this stuff, and there's nobody there who's extending that hand to pull me where I need to be. There's nobody who's taking that extra step or making that effort to, just like he had just said, to make it relatable to me. Because when I'm going to church, from what I've experienced, I don't know what you're talking about. Everybody's talking about marriages and, things that relate to that target audience, that 40, 50, 60, that, 30s and up. And I'm just like, I'm not married. I need him, but that's not what I need him for. I feel like every service doesn't have to be about there has to be some type of connection, something that keep me there. I'm not married. I don't want to keep talking about marriages, or I'm not suffering. That's not that I'm not suffering with bills, but that's not what 20-something-year-olds need him for right now. So there has to be somebody who's willing to take that extra step to create this bridge. He can help you with your problems too.
Do you think they would benefit from gatherings or group gatherings, so they can discuss what they're going through? So instead of saying, "Hey, let's go to church," hey, do you think we can come together just for everybody to talk about what's on that church, or what's holding them back from doing a certain thing? Do you think they would benefit from stuff like that, or even group discussions as such a way having now, where people can just come and talk? Do you think the youth would like that? And just
yes, I do. I think that before there's any progress, we have to rebuild that trust between the younger generation and the church. So we just, like you just said, have open discussions, and maybe it's not necessarily a sermon today. What do you want to talk about? You know what I mean? What are you here for today? What do you need to hear today? Let him, so that we're not always, like he had just said, sitting there and probably on our phones while somebody is talking and talking and talking. Give them a chance to talk. And then you, as a preacher, I've never ran a church, but if you know what your members are suffering with, you know what they need to hear. and then you know what to talk about next Sunday. You know what I mean? Like, if the church, if everybody in the church is just more connected and understanding of each other, then I feel like that's how the cycle will be broken.
The truth seems to be geared towards our elders. Like that's a deep message there. You know, that what people are saying is not necessarily geared to the youth; it's geared to older people.
Yeah.
When the person was saying this is really so that's deep. Like the church need to change that message. I mean, of course, we don't change the message of Christ, but we need to change youth that did crazy things. You know, and it was literally they just wanted to talk. You know, and having that open ear. And it, you know, it was a job, and I loved it, and I enjoyed working with the youth. And it's not necessarily because of the pay, because honestly, the money that they pay you is not worth the stuff that you have to go through with promotion. And when it came down to it, after all that text, they literally just wanted to sit down and talk to someone. That's what this generation need. They're involved in all these things because they got a lot of stuff on their chest, and they don't know who to talk to or even go about how to talk to someone. And I think, like I said, I think this is the perfect opportunity for the church to come in and listen. Yeah, like you had something to say.
No, it was something that DA just said that I was 100% agreeing with. The delivery. And I feel like, you know, maybe have a team of people on leadership that can minister. You know, this person might be able to identify with this audience, and this person might be able to identify with this, you know, this audience. I definitely think different ministries, even if it's in a form of B groups or small groups, like you said, the mentorship is important. I think listening to the ages interest surveys are important. You know, we live in a time of technology. We can send a form or a Google form and just get to know our members, get to know the youth, get to know what's on their mind. And yes, we petition the Lord, and the Holy Spirit will reveal. We absolutely should be. The Holy Spirit should be revealing to us what our congregation needs. But you know, God, we all know in part. So I feel like interest surveys and just taking that time, just having someone, you know, call or follow up, or you know, how have you been? I haven't heard from you. I see you going back and forth and everything, but I haven't really had a chance to check in. I think those things are missing from a lot of churches as well.
From a lot of families altogether.
Yeah, like it's I don't know. I personally gauge the audience, and I try to allow the Holy Spirit to lead me. And when I give the word, it's applicable. Like I try my best to tell it in as much as a story narrative way so that any and everybody can understand it. But that's just me. So that's why I'm saying I feel like a team. But I also, again, I work with youth all my life, so it's easy for me to say that. That's why I'm saying a team should be sufficient, because then those people that have those strengths and those experience will be able to step in so everybody can get what they need. And also the fivefold ministry, I feel like actually operate together. You know what I'm saying? Not just a pastor doing everything, or you know, a prophet is doing everything. Like all of the fivefold come together as, you know, as God's grace gift, and work together in unity so that the body can not be lacking and they can receive what's needed.
Yeah. Someone said, I feel like it's treated like the trickle down economy. I guess people assume that the elders will lead the young, but that's not always how it happens in the end. I agree with that. Like it'll be hard for someone who's like 75 to connect with someone who's 21. There's such a huge gap, and that's what we have in church. We have a whole bunch of elder people um, that are trying to gather the youth, but they have is a class uh, of ideals, you know, like what's right and wrong. You can't expect what you were doing in your youth to be the same as someone, you know, that's 20 something, you know, that's generations apart. So I think you're right. And that's the reason why there should always be a training, you know, you should always be training those be below you, like you're doing with your protests and stuff like that. And the reason why you're going out, because you want your siblings to see that. Hopefully they see it and then they pass the same thing on. But when you have this huge gap, like you said, there's gonna always be this disconnect. And Key, you also mentioned the 5 forward. I was gonna mention that too. Like that's a reason why it'll be hard to have an 85-year-old evangelist that can go out and minister to someone who's 15. You know, so everybody work together, and I think that would be the way to youth the youth thing. But we definitely need to make things interesting. It can't just be like you said, a sermon. Come here, sit down, listen. It needs to be, and I'm telling you, like the youth, with the ones I did, they will open up, especially when one-on-one talking, and just pull out the things that we're going through. It may take time. Sometimes some of the kids I work with, it would take me 6 months before they finally got to the point where they wanted to talk. And church has to be willing to do that. We can't get bored with it.
And just like you were saying, Damien, like in the beginning, we might have to be tricking people, like you said, a trick, a trip to the beach, or a summer block party, or something at the playground to get people interested. Maybe they just come in because it's free hot dogs, or come in because whatever the case may be. Just like right now, some people may be watching just because they're my friends and I sent them this link, but now they're hearing the conversation. You know what I'm saying? And so I feel like we have to think of different ways to get people there, but then once we get them there, accept them and let them gain a trust, gain a comfortability with the idea of being a part of a church community. And then once they understand, once they get there, and like I said, they probably only came for the hot dogs, but they may have one conversation. Like you said, those one conversations that you had with people standing outside, it means the world. So they came for a hot dog and they got a conversation waiting in line, and now they just showed up for Sunday service. So it's little things just like that.
Damien, I was actually going to say that. When you were mentioned going to play basketball with your mentor, you remember more the basketball game or the conversations you had? I don't even consider it tricking. I consider it getting to know the individual and appealing to that interest. That's exactly what Jesus did. Think about it. Jesus wasn't spending all his time in a pulpit. He literally went to disciples while they were doing in the midst of their occupation. He walked with them and he talked with them. You know what I'm saying? Like that's it. It's pattern. It's Bible. It's the pattern that Jesus set. It's the answer. Like I don't want to keep saying the same thing over and over again, but what Deasia said is the absolute answer, because it's literally what Jesus did. It's how he ministered. When he met the woman at the well, he met her doing what? What'd she do? Drawing water. That was her thing. When he ministered to her, he used the analogy of water. Jesus not only met you where you were, he ministered to you according to what you understood based upon your grid, based on
your terms.
Yep. And there was that connection. She was able to connect with him. He just wasn't some prophet giving her a word. Like we've all seen that. We've all had a word. We see how that works. There was a heart-to-heart connection, and she was able to receive what he had to say. And then she ran and told everybody else. So that was evangelism in itself. So what the agent said was spot on, Damien, because it's literally the Bible.
Yeah, absolutely. This young lady is smart here. It's true. And sometimes you gotta get to the point where I'm going there to spread the gospel. I just want to go spend time with this person. Like it literally can be that. And I'm telling you, when you go with that approach, the person will more likely open up to you and hear you out, instead of like, oh, I want to say this to you today. I want to tell you to stop, snorting drugs and whatever it may be. It's like, no, I just want to get to know you on a personal level. And somebody said it's about building a community. Yeah, the church is a community. Like people see it as people just going, but no, it's a community that should be thriving off of each other and helping one another, because it's often referred to as a body, and the body can't work without the arms, legs, toes. Everything has to work together, and we have to know what each other is good at. So, yeah, the church need to come out of this building and just get to know, these kids, these youth. And kind of push something on them.
And the knee's important too. The pinky's important too. The pinky toe's important too. I think through that, getting to know each other, we draw the goal and we help people feel important, and we help people understand that just the way God created them is great enough. So if you just if you think I'm just a knee, we need a knee. You know what I'm saying? Like if you think I'm a middle toe, we need that middle toe. Cut that middle toe up and see how easy it is for you to walk. So I feel like with the relationship building, just drawing out that goal, just stamping that value on the individual, just letting the individual know how valuable God sees them, how precious they really are, just being who they are. You know what I'm saying? Just showing up was a blessing. That's very important.
Yeah. So I think the very first thing that has to be worked on is just that we got to leave everything at the door. Obviously, everyone is here, and the one thing that we can all agree on is Jesus Christ. So I feel like if we're going to go to church, everything else has to be left at the door besides that. You know, this person is here, and they may look this way, or I might have heard this or seen them do this, but they're here today. And this, obviously that means there's one thing we can agree on, and that's the only one thing that matters right now. And like you said, once you get there, maybe they'll change their mind. Maybe they'll see it the way you see it, or maybe they won't. But at the end of the day, you're not going to be there on Judgment Day. So love that person for what they are there for. Because once the church is seen as a more acceptable place, it'll be, or seen more as a safer place, you know, for those progressive people, then that will lessen the disconnect. People don't want to sit in a place where they don't feel like they're welcome.
Absolutely. You need to, like I said, first of all, come to take where they are. It's not mean that, you know, we are happy with necessarily what they're doing, but I just have to put it down, as Kia said, is to get them to love you. And then in that moment of them getting to know you and trusting you, and you show them how much, like Kia said, how much they are loved, how much value is in them. More often than not, they change themselves because they are learning how valuable they are. Like I mentioned earlier, if somebody stole drugs, you know, they're doing it because kind of led them to that, you know, the environment. But when they come and see how valuable they are, stop doing that on their own instead of just bashing. And it's rare that we see in the scripture where Christ came and literally, you know, just told someone, you need to stop doing this. Usually he'll talk to them about something first, and then that person would start asking them a question like, who are you? How do you know so much about? And they'll open up and start telling what they did wrong, you know, and then he'll tell them, you know, your love, your sins are forgiven, and everything. But most of the time, the order was they felt his love, and then they started talking about
Amen.
And that's how it went. And I think the church need to do that, not come to these youth bashing about their clothing. None of that's all that. It's external
made up stuff. People just make stuff up.
At all.
None of that's Bible.
Yeah, none of that at all. But especially now with the youth not having household, you know, what they call it, full family, or you know, parents, things like that.
The nuclear family.
Yeah, nuclear family. Not having the nuclear family, that's all broken up. The church does need to step in and help with that. You know, no one can replace a father, no one can replace a mother, but they can show each individual how valuable they are, so that they can, you know, be a good parent to their children whenever they have one. But we hit the hour mark, which is normally how long we go. Before we go, any final comments? Go ahead, kid.
No.
Oh, I'm about to say you have.
It started breaking up. I couldn't hear what you guys were saying.
Oh, I was asking Kia if she had any final comments.
The what I was thinking about, I think for the last couple of days, encounters, the importance of an encounter with the Holy Spirit and how transformative an encounter is. And when Deasia was speaking earlier, she was saying I've had more of a breakthrough on the edge of my bed than I did in a corporate body. But I was thinking if we could just invite God in, because you know we have our programs and we have our topics and what we want to do. But if churches corporately could just spend time just reverencing the Holy Spirit and just inviting the King of Kings in, I believe that encounter would cause the transformation that would ultimately address everything that we just discussed today. That was all. Whether it's corporately or individual or in a small group setting, I think encounter with the Holy Spirit is imperative.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to the church being right because it's tough. It'll be tough to get somebody who's like say a youth or someone who don't know Christ to be into the Holy Spirit. That whole idea would be something different. But if that person
No,
is
I mean, like, if the atmosphere is set and the Holy Spirit comes in, a dog, I'm not really saying a dog, they're not made in his image, but like a little child can get caught up in the presence of God. That's what I'm saying. Like, if the atmosphere is conducive for the presence of God to show up on the scene, that would also help engage.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with what you were saying. I was just saying that what you're right is completely makes sense. Like, we need to make sure we're right. So when we do interact with these people, they can feel, feel the goodness and everything. We have to make sure, right? I was agreeing with you with that because many people think, oh, I want this unsaved person or this youth, I want them to know the Holy Spirit. Yeah, you want that, but make sure you're right, and maybe they'll have that experience. Because some people on their own, like I was talking to Deja, some people can experience on their own, and some people are not. When it comes to that, Deja, you have any final things you want to say?
I think that this was a very important conversation. For everybody watching, whether young or old, I think that if you're watching this, then obviously you are a warrior of Christ, and for us to progress any further, there has to be an understanding and an acceptance of one another. You know what I'm saying? Because you're just not going to look at somebody, like you said, a 75-year-old can't look at a 21-year-old and understand. So there has to be communication. There has to be an open playing field for everybody. There's room for all of us. Like we just discussed, we have to act just like he acted. If you want to get to know someone, you want them to walk in the faith of the Lord, then you have to show him that the Lord is all forgiving, and that you, with all your problems and all your insecurities and all your mistakes, belong here as well. So once we get that going, then I think that the Black community in general will be much more stronger.
All right. So first of all, I just want to say thank both of you. Yeah, as always, thank you for coming on. Deja, thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep
Thank you.
forward. Don't let anyone tell you that you're doing anything wrong. Yeah, you're definitely on the right path. And then if you ever want to come back on board, with a discussion, if
I love to talk, so
so you ever have a topic come to mind and you want to come back on board, we love to have you back on board. If any of those friends who that you those in your circle group who may want to come on and discuss and just talk about this, we can do that. And it don't have to be here. We are also open to willing to talk to them too, because
got it.
I love stuff like this. Be on the air or off the air. So thank you for coming on board. It was greatly appreciated. And I hope the church, if you're listening, if you're religious, if you're a believer, that you got something out of this. That the overall point is we need to connect with the youth somehow, and that means leaving the walls and going out and just treating some people to some hot dogs.
Yeah.
Like just interact with them. So this is Warrior for Christ. We'll be back next week with another topic. Not sure what this next week's topic is going to be on, but on the January 9th, we're going to be talking about a business plan. How, if you're a believer, how can you start going after your own business and not just going to the bank trying to get a loan, but what type of mindset you need to have trying to start your own business. And we're going to have hopefully 3 panelists on, all believers and all started their own business from scratch, doing it themselves, putting in the hustle and bleeding for what they want. So that's what we're going to be talking about January 9th. I'm going to schedule it next week so you can see it throughout the whole week. But until then, everybody have a good week and be blessed.
Thank you.
Thank you.